It started like a normal night. Another hotel, another corridor, another room filled with people who smiled like they belonged there. But behind those smiles, something was shifting. Because on one specific night, Elvis Presley was quietly warned about the people closest to him. Not by a rival, not by the press, but by someone who had been watching the pattern for a long time. The warning wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was whispered. Don't trust anyone tonight. Elvis didn't take it seriously, at least not at first. And by the time he understood what that warning really meant, it was already too late. Subscribe now if you want true, cinematic stories that reveal the hidden emotional battles behind the legend, because this night didn't just change Elvis's plans. It changed the way he looked at loyalty forever. The hotel lobby looked perfect. Too perfect. Soft lighting reflected off marble floors. The air smelled like polished wood and expensive perfume, the kind designed to make people feel important the moment they walked in. Elvis hated that smell. It reminded him of rooms where everyone acted like they cared, until you stopped being useful. He stepped out of the elevator with his collar open, dark shirt pressed against his throat, sunglasses still on even though it was late. Not for style. He wore them because they made people hesitate before reading his face. Two men walked a few steps behind him. Security. Familiar faces. The rhythm of protection. But something felt off. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't danger in the obvious way. It was a sense, like being in a room where the temperature is normal, but your skin keeps warning you it isn't. Elvis reached the hallway that led to his suite. The carpet swallowed sound. Every door looked identical. Every shadow felt deeper than it should have been. At the end of the corridor, a figure waited, not pacing, not rushing, just standing. It was one of the crew, someone Elvis trusted because they were quiet. The kind of person who didn't ask for autographs, didn't brag about being close to him, didn't act like a friend just because they had access. Elvis slowed. "You all right?" Elvis asked, voice casual. The man's eyes flicked down the hallway, then back up. "Can I talk to you a second?" he said. Elvis gestured toward the door. "We can talk inside." The man shook his head. "Not inside." That alone made Elvis pause. He took off his sunglasses slowly, letting the hallway light hit his face. His eyes were tired, but sharp. "What is it?" Elvis asked. The man moved closer, lowering his voice until it became something private. "Don't trust anyone tonight," he said. Elvis blinked once. Then he gave a small laugh, not because it was funny, because it was easier than reacting. "You saying someone's going to steal my scarf?" Elvis joked, trying to keep the air light. The man didn't smile. "I'm serious," he said. "Tonight, just watch who's around you. Watch who's listening. Watch who keeps asking questions." Elvis felt a faint chill creep up his spine. He wanted to dismiss it. He wanted to tell himself this was paranoia or gossip or someone being dramatic. But the man's face wasn't dramatic. It was worried. "Who?" Elvis asked, voice quieter now. The man hesitated. That hesitation said more than any name could have. Elvis's jaw tightened. "Tell me?" The man swallowed. "I can't. Not out here." Elvis stared at him, the humor gone. "So you warn me, but you won't tell me who?" he asked. The man's eyes flicked toward the end of the hall again, as if the walls themselves were listening. "Because if I say it," he whispered, "it becomes real. And if it becomes real, they'll know I told you." Elvis felt his chest tighten. "They?" Elvis repeated. The man nodded once. And that was when Elvis realized something he didn't want to admit. This wasn't about one person. This was about a system around him. People who moved like friends, talked like family, smiled like they loved him, but made choices like he was a product. Elvis looked at his door, then back at the man. "How long you been seeing this?" Elvis asked. The man's voice dropped even lower. "Long enough to know you've been giving trust away like it's free," he said. "And long enough to know tonight might be the night it costs you." Elvis swallowed hard. He wanted to believe loyalty was simple. He wanted to believe the circle around him was safe. But the man's warning hung in the hallway, like smoke you couldn't clear out. Elvis put his sunglasses back on, not to look cool, because he needed armor. He nodded once. "All right, he said. I'll watch. The man grabbed his arm gently. Elvis, he said, urgent now. Don't just watch. Don't drink too much. Don't sign anything. Don't let anybody corner you alone. Elvis pulled his arm back, not offended, just overwhelmed. I got it, Elvis said. But the truth was he didn't. Not yet. Because even as he unlocked his suite door, one thought flashed through his head like a warning siren. If someone close to him was dangerous, then the real question wasn't who. The real question was how many. The door closed behind Elvis with a soft, final click. Too soft. He stood still for a second, hand resting on the handle, listening. The suite was lit, but not the way he usually left it. Lamps on that hadn't been on before. Curtains drawn tighter. The air carrying the faint smell of alcohol and cologne that wasn't his. Someone had been there, not breaking in, not sneaking, waiting. Elvis took off his sunglasses slowly and set them on the table by the door. His reflection stared back at him in the mirror, older than the man who'd walked into the lobby an hour earlier. Not tired, alert. Voices drifted from the living area. Laughter. Casual. Comfortable. Too comfortable. He stepped forward and saw them. 3 people he knew well enough to let his guard down. A friend. A business associate. Someone who always showed up at the right time, with the right advice. Hey, E, one of them said. Thought you might want company tonight. Elvis forced a smile. Didn't know I was expecting it. The man laughed. Come on. You never are. They were already sitting. Drinks poured. Papers stacked neatly on the coffee table, like they'd been measured and aligned on purpose. Elvis's eyes went straight to the papers. Contracts. Not finalized ones, but close. The kind that only needed a signature. The kind people waited until late at night to bring out, when resistance was softer and judgment blurred. His chest tightened. The warning echoed again. Don't trust anyone tonight. You want a drink? Someone asked, already reaching for a bottle. Elvis shook his head. Not right now. That alone shifted the room. Not dramatically, but enough. One of them leaned back. You sure? Been a long day. Yeah, Elvis said. I'm sure. He walked closer, picked up one of the papers, and skimmed it. He didn't need to read every line to know what it was. Another agreement. Another commitment. Another decision being framed as a favor. Who brought these? Elvis asked. A pause. Then, we figured you want to say them while everyone's here. Everyone. That word hit wrong. Elvis set the paper down carefully. I don't remember saying tonight was a work night. The smiles didn't fade, but they changed shape. It ain't work, someone said. It's looking out for you. Elvis exhaled slowly through his nose. There it was. Always dressed up as concern, as protection, as loyalty. He thought about the man in the hallway, the tension in his voice, the way he'd hesitated to say names. Elvis straightened. Why didn't anyone tell me you were coming? He asked. Another pause. Longer this time. We didn't want to bother you, someone replied. That was the answer. They hadn't asked. They'd assumed. Elvis felt the room closing in, not physically, but strategically. Every chair placed just right. Every voice calm. Every move designed to make resistance feel rude. He realized then that this wasn't an ambush. It was a system doing what it always did, moving without needing his permission. Elvis walked to the window and pulled the curtain back an inch. City lights spilled in, sharp and real. He needed something unplanned in the room. Behind him, someone cleared their throat. We just need a few minutes, a voice said. Then we'll let you rest. Elvis didn't turn around. He stared out at the city and understood something with sudden clarity. They weren't waiting for his decision. They were waiting for his compliance. And for the first time that night, Elvis didn't laugh it off. He stayed silent. And in that silence, the power in the room began slowly to shift. Elvis finally turned around. Not abruptly, not angry, measured. The kind of movement that made people stop talking without knowing why. He leaned against the edge of the table, close enough to the contract to touch them, but not close enough to be trapped by them. His voice, when it came, was calm, too calm. How long? He asked. No one answered right away. Elvis smiled faintly. That long, huh? One of them shifted in his seat. You're reading too much into this. Elvis nodded slowly. Maybe. He tapped the top page with one finger. But this didn't get written today. Silence. He picked up the contract again, this time really looking at it. Dates. Clauses. Language that bent instead of broke. The kind of wording that protected everyone in the room. Except him. You've been planning this, Elvis said, not accusing, stating. Someone laughed nervously. Planning is a strong word. Elvis looked up. So is control. That landed. He felt it in the way shoulders tightened, in the way eyes avoided his, in the way no one tried to interrupt him now. You didn't think I'd notice, Elvis continued. You thought I'd be tired, or distracted, or grateful you showed up. He shook his head. That's the part that hurts. One of them finally spoke up. We're trying to protect you. Elvis exhaled sharply, the closest he'd come to anger all night. From what? He asked. Myself. No answer. He straightened, walking slowly around the room as he spoke, putting distance between himself and the table. You know what the difference is between looking out for someone and controlling them? Elvis said, one asks, the other decides. He stopped near the door, hand resting on the frame, grounding himself. The warning from the hallway, replayed again, clearer now. Don't trust anyone tonight. It hadn't been paranoia. It had been pattern recognition. Elvis realized then that the betrayal wasn't a single act. It wasn't even a single person. It was years of decisions made without him, justified by his success, hidden behind familiarity. That was the part that stung the most, not the contracts. The assumption that he wouldn't push back. He turned back to them. I'm not signing anything tonight, Elvis said. A few of them tried to speak at once. Elvis raised his hand. Not sharply, just enough. And I'm not drinking, he added. And I'm not letting this turn into one of those nights where I wake up tomorrow wondering what I agreed to. He paused. If you're here because you care, he said, you'll understand. The room held its breath. Finally, one man stood. We can come back another time. Elvis nodded. No, he said. You won't. That was new. They left quietly. No slamming doors. No threats. Just a retreat that felt temporary, but real. When the door closed, Elvis stood alone in the suite. He walked back to the table, gathered the contracts, and dropped them into the trash. Only then did his hands start to shake, because the warning had been right, and because listening to it meant accepting a harder truth. Some of the people closest to him weren't protecting Elvis Presley. They were protecting what he gave them. The suite felt different once they were gone. Not quieter, emptier. Elvis stood in the middle of the room, listening to the low hum of the city outside, the distant traffic reminding him that the world kept moving no matter what just cracked open inside him. He poured himself a glass of water and drank it slowly, hands still unsteady. He hadn't realized how much effort it took to keep things easy all the time, to smile, to joke, to let moments slide so no one felt uncomfortable. Tonight, he hadn't done that, and the cost arrived almost immediately. The phone rang. Elvis stared at it for a long moment before answering. Yeah, he said. The voice on the other end was calm, practiced. I hear there was a misunderstanding. Elvis leaned against the counter. There wasn't. A pause. Then, you embarrassed some people tonight. Elvis closed his eyes. There it was. Not concern. Not curiosity. Damage control. I protected myself, Elvis replied. That's not how everyone's going to see it. Elvis opened his eyes. That's not my problem. The line went quiet. When the call ended, Elvis felt the weight settle in. He knew what came next. Rumors framed as concern, distance disguised as scheduling conflicts, loyalty quietly reevaluated. Saying no didn't end control. It exposed it. Later that night, Elvis sat on the edge of the bed, jacket still on, staring at the floor. He thought about how many times he'd been warned before, not just tonight, but over the years. Warnings he'd laughed off because confronting them meant disrupting the illusion that everything around him was built on trust. It hadn't been. It had been built on access. And access, once questioned, became resentment. Elvis lay back and stared at the ceiling. For the first time, he understood why people around him preferred the version of Elvis who joked instead of questioned, who complied instead of paused. That version was easier to manage. This one wasn't. The realization didn't make him feel powerful. It made him feel alone, because drawing a line didn't just push people back. It showed him exactly who had been standing too close for the wrong reasons. The consequence didn't arrive loudly. There were no angry confrontations, no dramatic ultimatums, no doors slammed in his face. It came quietly, disguised as professionalism. The next morning, Elvis noticed a change immediately. Calls were shorter, responses slower, schedules suddenly flexible. People who once checked in constantly now kept their distance, as if waiting to see which version of Elvis would show up next, the easy one or the inconvenient one. He recognized the tactic, distance as discipline. By midday, word had already traveled. Not the truth, but a version of it. Elvis was difficult. Elvis is under a lot of stress. Elvis made things awkward last night. None of it mentioned contracts. None of it mentioned assumptions. Just tone. Elvis sat alone in a small side room before rehearsal, staring at his reflection in the mirror. The face looking back at him wasn't angry. It was alert. He thought about the man in the hallway. The warning, the hesitation, the fear of saying names out loud. That man hadn't been dramatic. He'd been careful. Now Elvis understood why. Because once you stop being predictable, the system doesn't attack you. It waits you out. That afternoon, someone he trusted knocked on the door. "Mind if I sit?" the man asked. Elvis nodded. They didn't talk right away. Finally, the man exhaled. "You shook things up last night." Elvis met his eyes. "Good." The man hesitated. "You know what that means." Elvis did. It meant fewer favors disguised as help. Fewer invitations framed as opportunities. Fewer people pretending closeness for access. And more pressure to smooth things over. Elvis leaned back in his chair. "I'm not apologizing," he said. The man studied him. "Then some people are going to pull away." Elvis nodded once. "Let them." That answer surprised even him. Because for the first time, the fear of being controlled outweighed the fear of being alone. That night, Elvis walked the hotel corridor again, the same one where the warning had been given. Same carpet, same silence, different man. He stopped at the spot where the man had stood. The warning hadn't saved him from betrayal. It had prepared him for clarity. And clarity, Elvis was learning, always came at a cost. Elvis didn't confront anyone else after that night. He didn't need to. The silence told him more than arguments ever could. In the days that followed, the circle around him subtly rearranged itself. Some people faded out without explanation. Others became suddenly polite, careful with their words, less familiar. The room around Elvis grew smaller, but clearer, and for the first time, clarity felt safer than comfort. He thought again about the warning in the hallway. How casual it had sounded. How easy it would have been to ignore it completely. He almost had. That bothered him more than the betrayal itself, because it meant he had known, on some level, for a long time. Known that trust around him was conditional. That loyalty came with expectations he'd never agreed to. The warning hadn't created the problem. It had simply forced him to stop pretending it wasn't there. One evening, Elvis sat alone with a guitar resting across his lap, not playing it, just holding it. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to make him restless. Now it felt earned. He realized something then, something small but permanent. Listening didn't make him weaker. It made him harder to control. That night, he made a quiet promise to himself, not dramatic, not spoken out loud. He would ask more questions. He would slow things down. He would stop confusing familiarity with loyalty, not because he distrusted everyone, but because he finally trusted himself. The warning he'd received had been late, but it hadn't been useless. Because from that night on, Elvis Presley stopped laughing things off that deserved to be taken seriously. And in doing so, he changed the balance of power in rooms where he'd once been the last to know. Some people never forgave him for that. Others respected him more than they ever had. Elvis accepted both outcomes. Because the cost of listening, even when it came late, was far less than the cost of never listening at all. And that night, the one that started with a whisper in a hallway, became the moment Elvis stopped being managed and started being aware.